Rapunzel by the Brothers Grimm. There were once a man and woman who had long in vain wished for a child. At length the woman hoped that God was about to grant her desire. These people had a little window at the back of their house from which a splendid garden could be seen, which was full of the most beautiful flowers and herbs. It was, however, surrounded by a high wall, and no one dared to go into it because it belonged to an enchantress, who had great power and was dreaded by all the world. One day the woman was standing by this window and looking down into the garden when she saw a bed which was planted with the most beautiful rampion, Rapunzel, and it looked so fresh and green that she longed for it and had the greatest desire to eat some. This desire increased every day, and as she knew she could not get any of it, she quite pined away and began to look pale and miserable. Then her husband was alarmed and asked, "What ails you, dear wife?" "Ah," she replied, "if I can't eat some of the rampion, which is in the garden behind our house, I shall die." The man, who loved her, thought, "Sooner than let your wife die, bring her some of the rampion yourself. Let it cost what it will." At twilight, he clambered down over the wall into the garden of the enchantress, hastily clutched a handful of rampion, and took it to his wife. She at once made herself a salad of it, and ate it greedily. It tasted so good to her, so very good, that the next day she longed for it 3 times as much as before. If he was to have any rest, her husband must once more descend into the garden. In the gloom of the evening, therefore, he let himself down again. But when he had clambered down the wall, he was terribly afraid, for he saw the enchantress standing before him. "How can you dare," said she with an angry look, "descend into my garden and steal my rampion like a thief? You shall suffer for it." "Ah," answered he, "let mercy take the place of justice. I only made up my mind to do it out of necessity. My wife saw your rampion from the window and felt such a longing for it that she would have died if she had not got some to eat." Then the enchantress allowed her anger to be softened, and said to him, "If the case be as you say, I will allow you to take away from with you as much rampion as you will. Only I make one condition. You must give me the child which your wife will bring into the world. It shall be well treated, and I will care for it like a mother." The man in his terror consented to everything, and when the woman was brought to bed, the enchantress appeared at once, gave the child the name Rapunzel, and took it away with her. Rapunzel grew into the most beautiful child under the sun. When she was 12 years old, the enchantress shut her into a tower, which lay in the forest, and had neither stairs nor door, but quite at the top was a little window. When the enchantress wanted to go in, she placed herself beneath it and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair to me." Rapunzel had magnificent long hair, fine as spun gold, and when she heard the voice of the enchantress, she unfastened her braided tresses, wound them round one of the hooks of the window above, and then the hair fell 20 ells down, and the enchantress climbed up by it. After a year or 2, it came to pass that the king's son rode through the forest and passed by the tower. Then he heard a song, which was so charming that he stood still and listened. This was Rapunzel, who in her solitude passed her time by letting her sweet voice resound. The king's son wanted to climb up to her, and looked for the door to the tower, but none was to be found. He rode home, but the singing had so deeply touched his heart that every day he went out into the forest and listened to it. Once, when he was thus standing behind a tree, he saw that an enchantress came there, and he heard how she cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Then Rapunzel let down the braids of her hair, and the enchantress climbed up to her. "If that is the ladder by which one mounts, I too will try my fortune," said he. And the next day, when it began to grow dark, he went to the tower and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Immediately, the hair fell down, and the king's son climbed up. At first, Rapunzel was terribly frightened when a man such as her eyes had never yet beheld came to her. But the king's son began to talk to her quite like a friend, and told her that his heart had been so stirred that it had let him have no rest, and he had been forced to see her. Then Rapunzel lost her fear, and when he asked her if she would take him for her husband, and saw that he was young and handsome, she thought, "He will love me more than the old Dame Gothel does." And she said yes, and laid her hand on his. She said, "I will willingly go away with you, but I do not know how to get down. Bring with you a skein of silk every time that you come, and I will weave a ladder with it. And when that is ready, I will descend, and you will take me on your horse." They agreed that until that time he should come to her every evening, for the old woman came by day. The enchantress remarked nothing of this, until once Rapunzel said to her, "Tell me, Dame Gothel, how it happens that you are so much heavier for me to draw up than the young king's son. He is with me in a moment." "Ah, you wicked child," cried the enchantress. "What do I hear you say? I thought I had separated you from all the world, and yet you have deceived me." In her anger, she clutched Rapunzel's beautiful tresses, wrapped them twice around her left hand, seized a pair of scissors with her right, and snip, snap, they were cut off, and the lovely braids lay on the ground. And she was so pitiless that she took poor Rapunzel into a desert, where she had to live in great grief and misery. On the same day that she had cast Rapunzel, however, the enchantress fastened the braids of hair which she had cut off to the hook in the window, and when the king's son came and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair," she let the hair down. The king's son ascended, but instead of finding his dearest Rapunzel, he found the enchantress, who gazed at him with wicked and venomous looks. "Aha!" she cried mockingly. "You would fetch your dearest, but the beautiful bird sits no longer singing in the nest. The cat has got you, and will scratch out your eyes as well. Rapunzel is lost to you. You will never see her again." The king's son was beside himself with pain, and in his despair he leapt from the tower. He escaped with his life, but the thorns into which he fell pierced his eyes. Then he wandered quite blind about the forest, ate nothing but roots and berries, and did naught but lament and weep over the loss of his dearest wife. Thus he roamed about in misery for some years, and at length came to the desert where Rapunzel, with the twins she had given birth, a boy and a girl, lived in wretchedness. He heard a voice, and it seemed so familiar to him that he went toward it. And when he approached, Rapunzel knew him, and fell on his neck and wept. 2 of her tears wetted his eyes, and they grew clear again, and he could see with them as before. He led her to his kingdom, where he was joyfully received, and they lived for a long time afterward, happy and contented. Rumpelstiltskin by the Brothers Grimm. Once there was a miller who was poor, but who had a beautiful daughter. Now it happened that he had to go speak to the king, and in order to make himself appear important, he said to him, "I have a daughter who can spin straw into gold." The king said to the miller, That is an art which pleases me well. If your daughter is as clever as you say, bring her tomorrow to my place, and I will put her to the test." And when the girl was brought to him, he took her into a room which was quite full of straw, gave her a spinning wheel and a reel, and said, "Now set to work, and if by tomorrow morning early you have not spun this straw into gold during the night, you must die." Thereupon he himself locked up the room and left her in it alone. So there sat the poor miller's daughter, and for the life of her could not tell what to do. She had no idea how straw could be spun into gold, and she grew more and more frightened until at last she began to weep. But all at once the door opened, and in came a little man and said, "Good evening, Mistress Miller. Why are you crying so?" "Alas," answered the girl, "I have to spin straw into gold, and I do not know how to do it." "What will you give me," said the mannequin, "if I do it for you?" "My necklace," said the girl. The little man took the necklace, seated himself in front of the wheel, and whir, 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 3 turns, and the reel was full. Then he put another on, and whir, 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 3 times round, and the second was full too. And so it went until the morning, when all the straw was spun, and all the reels were full of gold. By daybreak the king was already there, and when he saw the gold he was astonished and delighted, but his heart became more and more greedy. He had the miller's daughter taken into another room full of straw, which was much larger, and commanded her to spin that also in one night if she valued her life. The girl knew not how to help herself, and was crying when the door opened again, and the little man appeared and said, "What will you give me if I spin that straw into gold for you?" "The ring on my finger," answered the girl. The little man took the ring, again began to turn the wheel, and by morning had spun all the straw into glittering gold. The king rejoiced beyond measure at the sight, but still he had not gold enough, and he had the miller's daughter taken into a still larger room full of straw, and said, "You must spin this too in the course of this night, and if you succeed, you shall be my wife." "Even if she be the miller's daughter," thought he, "I could not find a richer wife in the whole world." When the girl was alone, the mannequin came again for the 3rd time and said, "What will you give me if I spin the straw for you this time also?" "I have nothing left I could give," answered the girl. "Then promise me, if you should become queen, to give me your first child." "Who knows whether that will ever happen," thought the miller's daughter, and, not knowing how else to help herself in this strait, she promised the mannequin what he wanted. And for that he once more spun the straw into gold. And when the king came in the morning and found all he had wished, he took her in marriage, and the pretty miller's daughter became a queen. A year after, she brought a beautiful child into the world, and she never gave a thought to the mannequin. But suddenly he came into her room and said, "Now give me what you promised." The queen was horror-struck, and offered the mannequin all the riches of the kingdom if he would leave her the child. But the mannequin said, "No, something alive is dearer to me than all the treasures in the world." Then the queen began to lament and cry, so that the mannequin pitied her. "I will give you 3 days' time," he said. "If by that time you find out my name, then shall you keep the child." So the queen thought the whole night of all the names that she had ever heard, and she sent a messenger over to the country to inquire, far and wide, for any other names there might be. When the mannequin came the next day, She began with Casper, Malachor, Balthazar, and said all the names she knew, one after another. But to every one the little man said, "That is not my name." On the second day, she had inquiries made in the neighborhood as to the names of the people there, and she repeated to the mankin, the most uncommon and curious, "Perhaps your name is Short Tribs, or Sheepshanks, or Laceleg," but he always answered, "That is not my name." On the third day, the messenger came back again and said, "I have not been able to find a single new name, but as I came to a high mountain at the end of the forest, there was a fox and a hare bid each other good night. There I saw a little house, and before the house a fire was burning, and round about the fire quite a ridiculous little man was jumping. He hopped onto one leg and shouted, 'Today I bake, tomorrow brew, the next I'll have the young queen's child. Ha! Glad am I that no one knew that Rumpelstiltskin I am styled.'" You may imagine how glad the queen was when she heard the name, and when soon afterward the little man came in and asked, "Now, Mistress Queen, what is my name?" At first she said, "Is your name Conrad?" "No." "Is your name Harry?" "No." "Perhaps your name is Rumpelstiltskin." "The devil told you that! The devil told you that!" cried the little man, and in his anger he plunged his right foot so deep into the earth that his whole leg went in. And then in rage he pulled at his left leg so hard with both hands that he tore himself in two. Little Red Cap by the Brothers Grimm. Once upon a time there was a dear little girl who was loved by everyone who looked at her, but most of all by her grandmother, and there was nothing that she would not have given to the child. Once she gave her a little cap of red velvet, which suited her so well that she would never wear anything else, so she was always called Little Red Cap. One day her mother said to her, "Come, Little Red Cap, here is a piece of cake and a bottle of wine. Take them to your grandmother. She is ill and weak, and they will do her good. Set out before it gets hot, and when you are going, walk nicely and quietly, and do not run off the path, or you may fall and break the bottle, and then your grandmother will get nothing. And when you go into her room, don't forget to say, 'Good morning,' and don't peep into every corner before you do it." "I will take great care," said Little Red Cap to her mother, and gave her hand on it. The grandmother lived out in the wood, half a league from the village, and just as Little Red Cap entered the wood, a wolf met her. Little Red Cap did not know what kind of wicked creature he was, and was not afraid of him. "Good day, Little Red Cap," he said. "Thank you kindly, Wolf." "Whither away so early, Little Red Cap?" "To my grandmother's." "What have you got in your apron?" "Cake and wine. Yesterday was baking day, so poor sick grandmother is to have something good to make her stronger." "Where does your grandmother live, Little Red Cap?" "A good quarter of a league further on in the wood. Her house stands under the 3 large oak trees. The nut trees are just below. You surely must know it," replied Little Red Cap. The wolf thought to himself, "What a tender young creature. What a nice plump mouthful. She will be better to eat than the old woman. I must act craftily so as to catch her both." So he walked for a short time by the side of Little Red Cap, and then he said, "See, Little Red Cap, how pretty the flowers are about here. Why do you not look around? I believe, too, that you do not hear how sweetly the little birds are singing. You walk gravely along as if you were going to school, while everything else out here in the wood is merry." Little Red Cap raised her eyes, and when she saw the sunbeams dancing here and there through the trees, and pretty flowers growing everywhere, she thought, "Suppose I take Grandmother a fresh nosegay. That would please her too. It is so early in the day that I shall still get there in good time." And so she ran from the path into the wood to look for flowers. And whenever she had picked one, she fancied that she saw a still prettier one farther on, and ran after it, and so deeper and deeper into the wood. Meanwhile, the wolf ran straight to the grandmother's house and knocked at the door. "Who's there?" "Little Red Cap," replied the wolf. "She is bringing cake and wine. Open the door." "Lift the latch," called the grandmother. "I am too weak and cannot get up." The wolf lifted the latch, the door flew open, and without saying a word, he went straight to the grandmother's bed and devoured her. Then he put on her clothes, dressed himself in a cap, laid himself in bed, and drew the curtains. Little Red Cap, however, had been running about picking flowers, and when she had gathered so many that she could carry no more, she remembered her grandmother and set out on her way to her. She was surprised to find the cottage door standing open, and when she went into the room, she had such a strange feeling that she said to herself, "Oh dear, how uneasy I feel today. And at other times, I like being with grandmother so much." She called out, "Good morning," but received no answer. So she went to the bed and drew back the curtains. There lay her grandmother with her cap pulled far over her face and looking very strange. "Oh, grandmother," she said, "what big ears you have." "The better to hear you with, my child," was the reply. "But grandmother, what big eyes you have," she said. "The better to see you with, my dear." "But grandmother, what large hands you have." "The better to hug you with." "Oh, but grandmother, what a terrible mouth you have." "The better to eat you with." And scarcely had the wolf said this, than with one bound he was out of bed and swallowed up Little Red Cap. When the wolf had appeased his appetite, he lay down again in the bed, fell asleep, and began to snore very loud. The huntsman was just passing the house and thought to himself, "How the old woman is snoring. I must just see if she wants anything." So he went into the room, and when he came to the bed, he saw that the wolf was lying in it. "Do I find thee here, thou old sinner?" he said. "I have long sought thee." Then, just as he was going to fire at him, it occurred to him that the wolf might have devoured the grandmother, and that she might still be saved. So he did not fire, but took a pair of scissors and began to cut open the stomach of the sleeping wolf. When he had made 2 snips, he saw the little red cap shining, and then he made 2 snips more, and the little girl sprang out, crying, "Oh, how frightened I've been! How dark it was inside the wolf! And after that, the aged grandmother came out alive also, but scarcely able to breathe. Little Red Cap, however, quickly fetched great stones from which they filled the wolf's body, and when he woke, he wanted to run away, but the stones were so heavy that he collapsed at once and fell dead. Then all three were delighted. The huntsman drew off the wolf's skin and went home with it. The grandmother ate the cake and drank the wine which Little Red Cap had brought, and revived. But Little Red Cap thought to herself, "As long as I live, I will never by myself leave the path to run into the wood when my mother has forbidden me to do so." The Queen Bee by the Brothers Grimm. Two kings' sons once went out in search of adventures and fell into a wild, disorderly way of living so that they never came home again. The youngest, who was called Simpleton, set out to seek his brothers, but when at length he found them, they mocked him for thinking that he, with his simplicity, could get through the world when they too could not make their way, and yet were so much cleverer. They all three traveled away together and came to an anthill. The two elder wanted to destroy it, to see the little ants creeping about in their terror and carrying their eggs away. But Simpleton said, "Leave the creatures in peace. I will not allow you to disturb them." Then they went onwards and came to a lake, on which a great number of ducks were swimming. The two brothers wanted to catch a couple and roast them, but Simpleton would not permit it, and said, "Leave the creatures in peace. I will not suffer you to kill them." At length they came to a bee's nest, in which there was so much honey that it ran out of the trunk of the tree where it was. The two wanted to make a fire beneath the tree and suffocate the bees in order to take away the honey. But Simpleton again stopped them and said, "Leave the creatures in peace. I will not allow you to burn them." At length the three brothers arrived at a castle where stone horses were standing in the stables, and no human being was to be seen. And they went through all the halls until quite at the end they came to a door in which were three locks. In the middle of the door, however, there was a little pane through which they could see into the room. There they saw a little gray man who was sitting at the table. They called him once, twice, but he did not hear. At last, they called him for the third time, when he got up, opened the locks, and came out. He said nothing, however, but conducted them to a handsomely spread table, and when they had eaten and drunk, he took each of them to a bedroom. Next morning, the little gray man came to the eldest, beckoned to him, and conducted him to a stone table, on which were inscribed 3 tasks, by the performance of which the castle would be delivered from enchantment. The first was that in the forest, beneath the moss, lay the princess's pearls, 1,000 in number, which must be picked up, and if by sunset one single pearl was missing, he who had looked for them would be turned into stone. The eldest went thither and sought the whole day, but when it came to an end, he had only found 100, and what was written on the table came true, and he was turned into stone. Next day the second brother undertook the adventure, but it did not fare much better with him than with the eldest. He did not find more than 200 pearls, and was changed to stone. At last, it was Simpleton's turn to seek in the moss, but it was so difficult for him to find the pearls, and he got it on so slowly, that he seated himself on a stone and wept. And while he was thus sitting, the king of the ants, whose life he had once saved, came with 5,000 ants, and before long The little creatures had got all the pearls together and laid them in one heap. The second task, however, was to fetch out of the lake the key of the king's daughter's bedchamber. When Simpleton came to the lake, the ducks which he had saved swam up to him, dived down, and brought the key out of the water. But the third task was the most difficult. From amongst the 3 sleeping daughters of the king was the youngest and dearest to be sought out. They, however, resembled each other exactly, and were only to be distinguished by their having eaten different sweetmeats before they fell asleep. The eldest a bit of sugar, the second a little syrup, and the youngest a spoonful of honey. Then the queen of bees, whom Simpleton had protected from the fire, came and tasted the lips of all 3, and at last she remained sitting on the mouth which had eaten honey. And thus the king's son recognized the right princess. Then the enchantment was at an end. Everything was delivered from sleep, and those who had been turned to stone received once more their natural forms. The Moon by the Brothers Grimm. In days gone by, there was a land where the nights were always dark, and the sky spread over it like a black cloth. For there the moon never rose, and no star shone in the gloom. At the creation of the world, the light at night had been sufficient. 3 young fellows went out of this country on a traveling expedition, and arrived in another kingdom, where, in the evening, when the sun had disappeared behind the mountains, a shining globe was placed on an oak tree, which shed a soft light far and wide. By means of this, everything could very well be seen as distinguished, even though it was not so brilliant as the sun. The traveler stopped and asked a countryman who was driving past with his cart, "What kind of light was that?" "That is the moon," answered he. "Our mayor bought it for 3 tailors and fastened it to the oak tree. He has to pour oil into it daily, and to keep it clean, so that it always burns clearly. He receives a tailor a week from us for doing it." When the countryman had driven away, one of them said, "We could make some use of this lamp. We have an oak tree at home, which is just as big as this, and we could hang it on that. What a pleasure it would be to not have to feel about at night in the darkness." "I'll tell you what we'll do," said the second. "We will fetch a cart and horses and carry away the moon. The people here may buy themselves another." "I'm a good climber," said the third. "I will bring it down." The fourth bought a cart of horses, and the third climbed a tree, bored a hole in the moon, passed a rope through it, and let it down. When the shining ball lay in the cart, they covered it over with a cloth, that no one might observe the theft. They conveyed it safely into their own country and placed it on a high oak. Old and young rejoiced when the new lamp let its light shine over the whole land, and bedrooms and sitting rooms were filled with it. The dwarfs came forth from their caves in the rocks, and the tiny elves in their little red coats danced in rings on the meadows. The 4 took care that the moon was provided with oil, cleaned the wick, and received their weekly tailor. But they became old men, and when one of them grew ill and saw that he was about to die, he appointed that 1/4 of the moon should, as his property, be laid in the grave with him. When he died, the mayor climbed up the tree and cut off 1/4 with the head shears, and this was placed in his coffin. The light of the moon decreased, but still not visibly. When the second died, the 2/4 was buried with him, and the light diminished. It grew weaker still after the death of the third, who likewise took his part away with him. And when the fourth was borne to his grave, the old state of darkness recommenced. And whenever the people went out at night without their lanterns, they knocked their heads together in collisions. When, however, the pieces of the moon had united themselves together again in the world below, where darkness had always prevailed, it came to pass that the dead became restless and awoke from their sleep. They were astonished when they were able to see again. The moonlight was quite sufficient for them, for their eyes had become so weak that they could not have borne the brilliance of the sun. They rose up and were merry, and fell into their former ways of living. Some of them went to play and dance, others hastened to the public houses, where they asked for wine, got drunk, brawled, quarreled, and at last took up cudgels and belabored each other. The noise became greater and greater, and at last reached even to heaven. St. Peter, who guards the gate of heaven, thought the lower world had broken out in revolt and gathered together the heavenly hosts, which were employed to drive back the evil one when he and his associates stormed the abode of the blessed. As these, however, did not come, he got on his horse and rode through the gate of heaven, down into the world below. There he reduced the dead to subjection, bade them lie down in their graves again, took the moon away with him, and hung it up in heaven. The Devil and His Grandmother by the Brothers Grimm. There was a great war, and the king had many soldiers, but gave them small pay, so small that they could not live upon it. So 3 of them agreed amongst themselves to desert. One of them said to the others, "If we are caught, we shall be hanged on the gallows. How shall we manage it?" Another said, "Look at the great cornfield. If we were to hide ourselves there, no one could find us. The troops are not allowed to enter it, and tomorrow they are to march away." They crept into the corn, only the troops did not march away. They remained lying all around about it. They stayed in the corn for 2 days and 2 nights, and were so hungry that they all but died. But if they had come out, their death would have been certain. Then said they, "What is the use of our deserting if we have to perish miserably here?" But now a fiery dragon came flying through the air, and it came down to them, and asked why they had concealed themselves there. They answered, "We are 3 soldiers who have deserted because the pay was so bad, and now we shall have to die of hunger if we stay here, or dangle on the gallows if we go out." "If you will serve me for 7 years," said the dragon, "I will convey you through the army so that no one shall seize you." "We have no choice and are compelled to accept," they replied. Then the dragon caught hold of them and with his claws, and carried them away through the air over the army, and put them down again on the earth far from it. But the dragon was no other than the devil. He gave them a small whip and said, "Whip with it and crack it, and then as much gold will spring up round about as you can wish for. Then you can live like great lords, keep horses, and drive your carriages. But when 7 years have come to an end, you are my property." Then he put before them a book they were all 3 forced to sign. "But first I will ask you a riddle," said he, "and if you can guess it, you shall be free and released from my power." Then the dragon flew away from them, and they went away with their whip, had gold in plenty, ordered themselves rich apparel, and traveled about the world. Wherever they were, they lived in pleasure and magnificence, rode on horseback, drove in carriages, ate and drank, but did nothing wicked. The time slipped quickly by, and when the 7 years were coming to an end, 2 of them were terribly anxious and alarmed. But the third took the affair easily and said, "Brothers, fear nothing. I still have my wits about me. I shall guess the riddle." They went out into the open country and sat down, and the 2 pulled sorrowful faces. Then an aged woman came up to them, who inquired why they were so sad. "Well," said they, "what has that got to do with you? After all, you cannot help us." "Who knows?" said she. "Just confide your trouble to me." So they told her that they had been the devil's servants for nearly 7 years, and that he'd provided them with gold as though it were hay, but that they had sold themselves to him, and were forfeited to him, if at the end of the 7 years they could not guess a riddle. The old woman said, "If you are to be saved, one of you must go into the forest. There he will come to a fallen rock which looks like a little house. He must enter that, and then he will obtain help." The 2 melancholy ones thought to themselves, "That will still not save us," and stayed where they were. But the third, the merry one, got up and walked on in the forest until he found the rock house. In the little house, a very aged woman was sitting, who was the devil's grandmother, and asked the soldier where he came from and what he wanted there. He told her everything that had happened, and as he pleased her well, she had pity on him and said she would help him. She lifted a great stone which lay above the cellar and said, "Conceal yourself there. You can hear everything that is said here. Only sit still and do not stir. When the dragon comes, I will question him about the riddle. He tells everything to me, so listen carefully to his answer." At 12 o'clock at night, the dragon came flying thither, and asked for his dinner. The grandmother laid the table, and served up food and drink, so that he was pleased, and they ate and drank together. In the course of conversation, she asked him what kind of day he had had, and how many souls he had got. "Nothing went very well today," he answered, "but I have laid hold of 3 soldiers. I have them safe." "Indeed, 3 soldiers. They're clever. They may escape you yet." The devil said mockingly, "They are mine. I will set them a riddle which they will never be able to guess." "What riddle is that?" she inquired. "I will tell you. In the great North Sea lies a dead dogfish. That shall be your roast meat, and the rib of a whale shall be your silver spoon, and a hollow old horse's hoof shall be your wine glass." When the devil had gone to bed, the old grandmother raised up the stone and let out the soldier. "Did you give heed to everything?" "Yes," said he. "I know enough, and I will save myself." Then he had to go back another way, through the window, secretly, and with all speed to his companions. He told them how the devil had been outwitted by the old grandmother, and how he had learned the answer to the riddle from him. Then they were all delighted and of good cheer, and took the whip, and with so much gold for themselves that it ran all over the ground. When the 7 years had fully gone by, the devil came with the book, showed them the signatures, and said, "I will take you with me to hell. There you shall have a meal. If you can guess what kind of roast meat you will have to eat, you shall be free and released from your bargain, and may keep the whip as well." Then the first soldier began and said, "In the great North Sea lies a dead dogfish that no doubt is the roast meat." The devil was angry and began to mutter, "Hmm, and asked the second, "But what will your spoon be?" "The rib of a whale. That is to be our silver spoon." The devil made a wry face, again growled, He said to the third, "And do you also know what your wine glass is to be?" "An old horse's hoof is to be our wine glass." Then the devil flew away with a loud cry and had no more power over them. But the three kept the whip, with as much money for themselves with it as they wanted, and lived happily to their end. Cinderella by the Brothers Grimm. The wife of a rich man fell sick, and as she felt that her end was drawing near, she called her only daughter to her bedside and said, "Dear child, be good and pious, and then the good God will always protect you, and I will look down on you from heaven and be near you." Therefore she closed her eyes and departed. Every day the maiden went out to her mother's grave and wept, and she remained pious and good. When winter came, the snow spread a white sheet over the grave, and by the time the spring sun had drawn it off again, the man had taken another wife. The woman had brought with her into the house 2 daughters, who were beautiful and fair of face, but vile and black of heart. Now began a bad time for the poor stepchild. "Is the stupid goose to sit in the parlor with us?" they said. "He who wants to eat bread must earn it. Out with the kitchen wench." They took her pretty clothes away from her, put an old gray bedgown on her, and gave her wooden shoes. "Just look at the proud princess, how decked out she is," they cried, and laughed, and led her into the kitchen. There she had to do hard work from morning till night, get up from daybreak, carry water, light fires, cook, and wash. Besides this, the sisters did her every imaginable injury. They mocked her and emptied her peas and lentils into the ashes, so that she was forced to sit and pick them out again. In the evening, when she had worked till she was weary, she had no bed to go to, but had to sleep by the hearth in the cinders. And as on that account she always looked dusty and dirty, they called her Cinderella. It happened that her father was once going to the fair, and he asked his 2 stepdaughters what he should bring back for them. "Beautiful dresses," said one. "Pearls and jewels," said the second. "And you, Cinderella," he said, "what will you have?" "Father, break off for me the first branch which knocks against your hat on your way home." So he bought beautiful dresses, pearls, and jewels for the 2 stepdaughters. And on his way home, as he was riding through the green thicket, a hazel twig brushed against him and knocked off his hat. Then he broke off the branch and took it with him. When he reached home, he gave his stepdaughters the things which they had wished for, and to Cinderella he gave the branch from the hazel bush. Cinderella thanked him, went to her mother's grave and planted the branch on it, and wept so much that the tears fell down on it and watered it. And it grew and became a handsome tree. Thrice a day Cinderella went and sat beneath it, and wept and prayed. And a little white bird always came on the tree, and if Cinderella expressed a wish, the bird threw down on her what she wished for. It happened, however, that the king gave orders for a festival which was to last 3 days, and to which all the beautiful young girls of the country were invited, in order that his son might choose himself a bride. When the 2 stepsisters heard that they too were to appear among the number, they were delighted, called Cinderella and said, "Comb our hair for us, brush our shoes, and fashion our buckles, for we are going to the wedding at the king's palace." Cinderella obeyed, but wept, because she too would have liked to go with them to the dance, and begged her stepmother to allow her to do so. "You go, Cinderella," she said, "covered in dust and dirt as you are? And would you go to the festival? You have no clothes or shoes, and yet would dance?" As, however, Cinderella went on asking, and stepmother said at last, "I have emptied a dish of lentils into the ashes for you. If you have picked them out again in 2 hours, you shall go with us." The maiden went through the back door into the garden and called, "You tame pigeons, you turtle doves, and all you birds beneath the sky, come and help me to pick the good into the pot, the bad into the crop." Then 2 white pigeons came in by the kitchen window, and afterwards the turtle doves, and at last all the birds beneath the sky came whirring and crowding in, and alighted amongst the ashes. And the pigeons nodded their heads and began pick, 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 pick. And the rest also began to pick, 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 and gathered all the good grains into the dish. Hardly had 1 hour passed before they had finished, and all flew out again. Then the girl took the dish to her stepmother, and was glad, and believed that now she would be allowed to go with them to the festival. But the stepmother said, "No, Cinderella, you have no clothes, and you cannot dance. You would only be laughed at." And as Cinderella wept at this, the stepmother said, "If you can pick 2 dishes of lentils out of the ashes for me in 1 hour, you shall go with us." And she thought to herself that she most certainly could not do it again. When the stepmother had emptied the 2 dishes of lentils amongst the ashes, the maiden went through the back door into the garden and cried, "You tame pigeons, you turtle doves, and all you birds beneath the sky, come and help me to pick the good into the pot, the bad into the crop." Then 2 white pigeons came in by the kitchen window, and afterward 2 turtle doves, and at length all the birds beneath the sky came whirring and crowding in, and alighted amongst the ashes. And the doves nodded their heads and began to pick, 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 and the others began to pick, 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 and gathered all the good seeds into the dishes, and before half an hour was over, they had already finished, and all flew out again. Then the maiden was delighted, and believed that she might now go with them to the wedding. But the stepmother said, "All this will not help. You cannot go with us, for you have no clothes and cannot dance. We should be ashamed of you." On this she turned her back on Cinderella and hurried away with her 2 proud daughters. As no one was now at home, Cinderella went to her mother's grave beneath the hazel tree and cried, "Shiver and quiver, little tree, silver and gold throw down over me." Then the bird flew a gold and silver dress down on her, and slippers embroidered with silk and silver. She put on the dress with all speed and went to the wedding. Her stepsisters and the stepmother, however, did not know her, and thought she must be a foreign princess, for she looked so beautiful in the golden dress. They never once thought of Cinderella, and believed she was sitting at home in the dirt, picking lentils out of the ashes. The prince approached her, took her by the hand, and danced with her. He would dance with no other maiden, and never let loose of her hand. And if anyone else came to invite her, he said, "This is my partner." She danced till it was evening, and then she wanted to go home. But the king's son said, "I will go with you and bear you company," for he wished to see to whom the beautiful maiden belonged. She escaped from him, however, and sprang into the pigeon house. The king's son waited until her father came, and then told him that the unknown maiden had leapt into the pigeon house. The old man thought, "Can it be Cinderella?" and had to bring him an axe and a pickaxe that he might hew the pigeon house to pieces, but no one was inside it. And when they got home, Cinderella lay in her dirty clothes among the ashes, and a dim little oil lamp was burning on the mantelpiece, for Cinderella had jumped quickly down from the back of the pigeon house and had run to the little hazel tree, and there she had taken off her beautiful clothes and laid them on the grave, and the bird had taken them away again. And then she had seated herself in the kitchen amongst the ashes in her gray gown. Next day, when the festival began afresh, and her parents and stepsisters had gone once more, Cinderella went to the hazel tree and said, "Shiver and quiver, my little tree, silver and gold throw down on me." Then the bird threw down a much more beautiful dress than on the preceding day, and when Cinderella appeared at the wedding, this dress, everyone was astonished at her beauty. The king's son had waited until she came, and instantly took her by the hand and danced with no one but her. When others came and invited her, he said, "This is my partner." When evening came, she wished to leave, and the king's son followed her and wanted to see into which house she went. But she sprang away from him and into the garden behind the house. Therein stood a beautiful tall tree on which hung the most magnificent pears. She clambered so nimbly between the branches like a squirrel that the king's son did not know where she had gone. He waited until her father came and said to him, "The unknown maiden has escaped from me, and I believe she has climbed up the pear tree." The father thought, "Can it be Cinderella?" and had an axe brought and cut the tree down, but no one was on it. And when they got onto the kitchen, Cinderella lay there amongst the ashes, as usual, for she had jumped down the other side of the tree, had taken the beautiful dress to the bird on the little hazel tree, and put on her gray gown. On the third day, when the parents and sisters had gone away, Cinderella went once more to her mother's grave and said to the little tree, "Shiver and quiver, my little tree, silver and gold throw down on me." And now the bird threw down on her a dress which was more splendid and magnificent than any she had yet had, and the slippers were golden. And when she went to the festival in the dress, no one knew how to speak for astonishment. The king's son danced with her only, and if anyone invited her to dance, he said, "This is my partner." When evening came, Cinderella wished to leave, and the king's son was anxious to go with her, but she escaped from him so quickly that he could not follow her. The king's son, however, had employed a ruse, and had caused the whole staircase to be smeared with pitch, and there, when she ran down, had the maiden's left slippers remained stuck. The king's son picked it up, and it was small and dainty, and all golden. Next morning, he went with it to the father and said to him, "No one shall be my wife, but she whose foot this golden slipper fits." Then there were two sisters, glad, for they had pretty feet. The eldest went with the shoe into her room and wanted to try it on, and her mother stood by. But she could not get her big toe into it, and the shoe was too small for her. Then her mother gave her a knife and said, "Cut the toe off. When you are queen, you will have no more need to go on foot." The maiden cut the toe off, forced the foot into the shoe, swallowed the pain, and went out to the king's son. Then he took her on his horse as his bride and rode away with her. They were obliged, however, to pass the grave, and there on the hazel tree sat the two pigeons and cried, "Turn and peep, turn and peep. There's blood within the shoe. The shoe is too small for her. The true bride waits for you." He looked down at her foot and saw how the blood was running out of her shoe and how it had stained her white stocking quite red. Then he turned his horse and took the false bride home again. "This also is not the right one," said he. "Have you no other daughter?" "No," said the man. "There is still a little stunted kitchen wench, which my late wife left behind her, but she cannot possibly be the bride." The king's son said he was to send her up to him, but the mother answered, "Oh no, she is much too dirty. She cannot show herself." But he absolutely insisted on it, and Cinderella had to be called. She first washed her hands and face clean, and then went and bowed down before the king's son, who gave her the golden shoe. Then she seated herself on a stool, drew her foot out of the heavy wooden shoe, and put it into the slipper, which fitted like a glove. And when she rose up and the king's son looked at her face, he recognized the beautiful maiden who had danced with him and cried, "That is the true bride." The stepmother and two sisters were horrified and became pale with rage. He, however, took Cinderella on his horse and rode away with her. As they passed the hazel tree, the two white doves cried, "Turn and peep, turn and peep. No blood is in the shoe. The shoe is not too small for her. The true bride rides with you." When they had cried that, the two came flying down and placed themselves on Cinderella's shoulders, one on the right, the other on the left, and remained sitting there. When the wedding with the king's son was to be celebrated, the two false sisters came and wanted to get in favor with the Cinderella and share her good fortune. When the betrothed couple went to the church, the elder was at the right side and the younger at the left, and the pigeons pecked out one eye from each of them. And thus, for their wickedness and falsehood, they were punished with blindness all their days.